Welcome to the Embracing Mystery podcast, finding ourselves in compassionate, creative interconnection. These will be monthly conversations discovering the intersection of creativity and spirituality. In every episode, we will be exploring ways of embracing creative spiritual mystery in our lives. To put that another way, we will also be discovering ways in which we are embraced by the mystery of compassionate, creative interconnection. In this process, we seek to become more fully ourselves, to find our home, our places of belonging, and to grow as creative, spiritual, relational people.
This is a conversational group podcast with 4 regulars who you see seated here today and occasional guests. And while all 4 of us may not be there every time, we are the voices and perspectives that you will hear from most. So we thought that it would be helpful to briefly introduce ourselves.
I'm Kevin Caldwell. I'm a father and husband and grandfather. I'm a singer, songwriter, poet, and I've got a PhD in a fancy thing called translation studies.
I'm Nazia Islam, otherwise known as Naz. I'm an academic librarian, poet, and artist. I have a background in anthropology, religious studies, and information science.
My name is Raymond Singh. I have a graduate degree in philosophy and religion, as well as training as an engineer. I'm also an amateur musician and poet, and also person.
I'm Stephen Spicer. I'm a spiritual director. I do visual art and graphic design as I work for Table Collective. I also have a master's degree in theology and live here in Pasadena, California with my wife Kaylee and our dog Winston. The Embracing Mystery podcast is an offering of the Table Collective, which is a creative interspiritual community for artists and contemplatives who seek to integrate their creative and spiritual selves. You can find out more on tablecollective.art. So why are we recording a live podcast? Because we actually see that as just the start of the conversation. Afterwards, we meet at tables and continue to discuss what was coming up during the podcast, as well as reflect on the questions that we end each episode with. And we don't just want that for people who are here in person, but also for you if you're listening online. We would love to have comments on YouTube, or you can join our online community at tablecollective.art as just further ways to continue to share what's happening for you as you listen and reflect with us. And that actually will affect our next topics for each of our episodes. We like to, from those conversations, then ask what else is coming up here that we can explore together.
So as we begin this first episode, each of our episodes will begin with a practice or shared creative reflection. So in this episode, Stephen will get us started with a reflective practice, and then I will facilitate a discussion around the question, where does creativity come from? And then we'll continue on with the discussion with our own origin stories.
Well, I want to get started with a practice to help us connect with our own inner artist and our own experiences, especially growing up, of formation around our own creativity. So let me grab this. What I will do is I will invite us into a space just to get settled, and then after that, guide you through a few different imaginative steps. So if you'll join with me. Let's just take a few moments to get ourselves settled and present. Take a few deep breaths. Now I just invite you to recall an early or formative experience growing up related to your creativity. That might be a specific moment, or it could be a longer pattern or belief that shaped how you experienced creativity. I just invite you to be present with that as it comes to mind. And if you have something just invite you to imagine that younger artist in you and notice their energy, their posture, and their way of being with you. What does that feel like? Now, we often have different kinds of experiences as we get older related to our creativity. But if you and this little one both feel positive about your creativity, just enjoy that moment together. But if you feel less sure of your creativity now, I invite you to receive from that younger self if they felt creative. Or maybe you were taught to doubt your creativity. Maybe you can then show that little one some of what you've learned in life since then, especially if that's something you've grown more comfortable in expressing yourself. But however you come to that, just notice what that's like and see if anything happens in that interaction. Well, thank you for joining me in that. I hope you begin to experience something there. And now I'm going to turn it over to Naz to get us started here.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that practice. So now we're going to open it up to conversation between the three of us. And this first episode is about creativity and where it comes from. But the question I want to open it up to all of us is, what were some of your early or formative experiences of creativity? Who wants to go first?
Do you want to go first, Kevin? Or
Sure. I think the one that comes to mind, and it came to mind during the practice, is it's sort of twofold. When I was very young, living in Granada Hills, my parents were in the process of splitting up, but I had an imaginary character named Jim Midnight, who I told lots of stories about, but only to myself. My mother knew I had this character. I don't think my dad did, but the stories were all in my head. And then at about the same time, for some reason, we had an old rowboat in our backyard. No grass out there, just this rowboat sitting out there. And my mother and I were playing in the rowboat one day, and I made up the game. And I remember jumping over the side and turning around and telling her, "Don't worry, Mom, I won't get wet. I've got towels in my pockets." And as I reflected on that just now, it was this kind of joyous freedom to kind of literally maybe swim in a imaginative world where towels in your pockets can keep you dry, and it just all makes sense, and not being afraid to sort of invite an adult into that world. So that's one of my early experiences, and we can probably talk more about that later, but I'll stop there for now.
Okay. For me, I was thinking about it. I've thought about it in the past of I don't actually have any particular strong memories growing up of my creativity. I did art from as early as it was an option, and it was my electives I took in middle school and high school. But young, I don't think of that. But during the practice, I remembered, I don't know if it was a competition. I probably loved a competition, which says its own things about me. But I remember the joy of getting to draw stuff that would get displayed in the school, where it's oh, people can see what I did. I liked making things. And so in this practice, I just felt the energy of, or the abandon of taking markers to the wall or something, which is not something I did. In middle school, we got to paint the wall, and that was fun. But just there's an abandon to it that I was feeling that I would like to figure out how to live in.
You got permitted to paint the wall.
Yeah, I got permitted.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had inside jokes about what we painted on the wall, and the art teacher did not like that, but we did get to paint.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how you felt?
How it felt to be with that little self?
Yeah, or painting the wall with
painting the wall. Well, I was with my friends, and it was our favorite. I shouldn't speak for them, but I really enjoyed that class. It was one of my favorites. And so I think there's just a freedom of getting to decorate things. I wouldn't think, I haven't thought about in our own home, just splash and paint on the wall. But like, there's a freedom in that. Yeah. That I don't know how to capture, but that's what I'm feeling right now
get
from
permission before you paint on the wall at the house. That's all. Yeah,
that's fair. But yeah, it was like a whole mural. We were no good at it, but it was fun.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up freedom because for me, that it connects to my experiences of creativity, which goes back really early for me. I think I was 3 or 4 years old. Before that, my memories are kind of fuzzy, but it was around my birthday and we were in Costco. And I think it was either my parents or their friends. They said that I can get anything I wanted that day.
That's dangerous. Yeah.
All right. So, to a 3 or 4 year old.
Yeah. So we went through all the aisles and then we went through like the art supply aisle or the office supplies. I don't remember exactly. But I remember stopping in my tracks when I was sitting in the cart and just saying that, I want that. And that was this big Costco size like set of markers, variety pack. I just remember getting so excited and knowing that that's what I wanted. And I remember this clearly because my dad forgot to put it in the trunk of the car. And then we got home.
And like he left it at the store?
He left it in the car. He just forgot to put it in the trunk. So I remember being so upset. Like, oh my God, like what I wanted, I didn't get. But he went back and brought it back. And I didn't have anything like that before. So, I had toys and things like that, but they didn't really interest me. And then once I opened that, variety pack, there were like neon markers, scented markers, stamps, just like a whole variety of things. I was like, this is so like exciting, so many colors. And then I just started like scribbling. That's where I felt so much freedom, especially as a little girl. I had a lot of trouble communicating, expressing my feelings a lot. My house was very difficult, so I kept everything inside. But once, it was like an unleashing, and it's kind of like, it felt like magic to me. There was like nothing on the paper. And then like, oh, I made that. I put this together. Like I put these colors together and mixing this. It was just like a whole new world for me. And I was like, all this stuff that was inside was just like pouring out.
That's amazing. Was it like mostly like, did you have like an imaginary world, like kind of what Kevin was doing in story form? Or was it like expressive arts of almost just like capturing raw color, texture?
Yeah, all of that, raw color, texture. And I think like reflecting things. I remember I would like look outside the window and then just like start scribbling grass and like trying to mirror things on the outside.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it was a very powerful, profound experience for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, there's so much inside of me that's coming out. Yeah.
That was already there. You were feeling like in some ways, and yet
I didn't know how to express it.
But yet you also saw things that drew it out. It sounds like literally drew it out. But
because I didn't know how to verbally express it. So I'm like, this just feels right. It felt like, for me, like art and scribbling and drawing felt like more of a first language for me than speaking.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Was that something that continued then in your childhood?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Did you ever lose that?
I did.
Okay.
I did. Yeah. When I turned 15, my first experiences with like very severe depression. That I got disconnected from that. But I found another medium, and that was writing and poetry.
Okay. Yeah. And I know you have you've shared with in some other table collective events. You've shared some of your visual art as well. So I know you're still doing that.
Yeah, I'm trying to reconnect back.
Yeah.
To it. So.
How did you get reconnected with that?
I think, I got busy with life and then depression and things like that. So, as an adult, I try and incorporate some of that creativity in my like everyday mundane life and like the way I dress, the way I cook, but trying to make more. And I think it was like last year where I tried to bring that back. Try to connect back with that like little artist self more intentionally to bring back a practice. Because I think when I was little, that's what I did after school. The motivation to get my homework done was so I can like draw for the rest of the night. So that was like a daily
Your parents must have loved you.
Yeah.
Like any child where they're like, I just want to do my homework so I can draw. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to, I guess, maybe do a follow-up question with talking about, maybe our formative experiences, but how do you think about creativity now, especially reflecting back on those like earlier formative experiences? And where do you think creativity comes from? Or where did you think it comes from, like back then versus like maybe now?
Yeah. Well, I was reflecting on that actually in the practice. And of course, since we're part of planning this, I knew these questions were coming. So it was in the back of my mind. But so I thought I knew how I was going to answer it. But in the practice, I saw a whole different sort of connection about where it comes from, because the two little vignettes that I shared, on the one hand, the Jim Midnight, all dressed in black, sort of a cowboy, usually a bad guy in old movies who's dressed that way, but he was a good guy in my life, but also really kind of mysterious and sort of a dark side. And I think the source of that creative storytelling was pain, actually, in my life. Parents going through a divorce, and I could feel it in the house, and I could feel it in my body. I've talked, before they passed, I talked a lot with them about those years. And there was a lot of pain, and that's kind of where I went with that. The other experience was joy, just the joy of play. And so even as I'm reflecting on my own life and my creative expression through my life, I have tended, for some reason, much more towards the Jim Midnight part of my creativity, the part that can come from pain and processing and metabolizing pain. And I just sensed in the practice, like, get back to the play part. Where's that Kevin? And so the little Kevin talking to me, I almost saw him kind of out there in the dirt, like with me in the rowboat, like, come on, let's play. Which I do with my grandkids, like, naturally. So, like, I know I can do it.
Bring that into your creativity, yeah.
Yeah. So, I think I have thoughts about like metaphysical sources of creativity and where it comes from. But what hit me today was just like joy and pain, play and processing, metabolizing pain. And I want to get back to some
something
of that.
I can relate to as well, especially that processing pain. I think that's where my early experiences of creativity came from. Kind of, again, I had a difficult home life, and there was a lot going on, and I just didn't know how to process that. But through a medium outside of me, I was able to do that, especially with the markers and the paint.
When you say a medium outside of you, what do you mean by that? Can you interpret that for us? Because I think I know what you mean, but I want to hear you say what you mean.
Right, because like I said, when I was younger, like verbalizing things was not. Yeah. It was very difficult, and I think I've gotten better, especially
clearly
through therapy. But it's like, I don't know. It's just something about engaging with something outside of me, which just felt very comforting.
Yeah, got it. So the like you mentioned grass, and you mentioned stuff you saw, and then actually drawing and painting and all that is outside of you as well. The paper is outside of you. Is that some of what and so connecting with that kind of brought that out? Is that?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good. I'm trying to think about how to come at this question, because my earlier experience was then shaped towards the end of high school. I remember having this thought of, I don't think I would go into graphic design or arts as a career because I didn't think I was creative enough. And what I meant by that was I don't think I have enough ideas quickly enough to turn around and do project after project. And I don't know so that raises a question of, is there like a tap that like you get so much and some people have more inspiration for things? But it was a limiting belief, I think, in many ways. And that's not how I see it now. I think now the way I approach it, if I don't have an idea or I'm stuck, like let's say I start a project, I had an initial idea and now it's just not resonating. It's much more feeling based for me now, where I will just sit with it or go take a shower or do whatever. And that's something that gets me out of my head is actually the way that I get into a creative space. And so just looking at it at the experiential level, like there's many different ways you can talk about what is that. We can put interpretive grids on top of our raw experience of creative life or spiritual life of, okay, well, I understand that to be experience of our consciousness connected, or that's God, or that's whatever. Everyone will have different ways to explain things, but stripping it back to that, like, what is happening here? So often for me, it's this kind of experience of, well, I get really still. It's not that I'm not thinking, but I'm really aware of whatever's going through my mind. And then I kind of wait and see what happens. I don't know. And that's usually where it comes from. And so I either end up having maybe something where it is processing pain, where I have an idea like, okay, I need to process this thing related to my family. And I have an idea for the piece. And now I'm stuck because I need to actually do the emotional processing to finish the piece. Then other times I'm not really sure where I'm starting from, and it's from square one, and I will intuitively make something that only makes sense later to me. So that's interesting to me, is that interplay that I don't always know what it is, but sometimes I do. Yeah.
And I think I had a little bit of the opposite experience, where when I was like a kid, everything felt kind of unlimited. I felt like really in my creative self. And I actually wanted to be an artist when I was little. Like I did. I wanted to be an illustrator. I wanted to go work in the art field, but that wasn't quite supported by my family. So that's something I started to suppress when I was in high school. Just trying to figure out like what I was going to do besides being an artist. Because for me, that was like my first identity. It still is.
Yeah.
And so, I got to college, and that part of me started to fall away a little bit. But I really got into research, even though like my creative practice wasn't as consistent as before. I do consider a lot of my research to inform my creativity now. So I love learning about history. I love learning about anthropology and different cultures. So it kind of enriches my creativity in that way. So I'm trying to work on, projects now where I'm like researching my family history and all this like hidden things that I didn't know about myself or my culture, and like processing that through my creative.
So that's like an inspiration for pieces you work on.
Yeah. So I'm working on like, I've been trying to work on for the past like 3 years, a project on indigo, like the color and also the plant. I found out there's like all this rich global history of like indigo plantations, like negative history, difficult history around the world. Yeah. And my family's from Bengal. And I come from a family of farmers from my dad's side of the family. And so I'm looking at all this history. I'm like, there were plantations, like there was a lot of oppression involved with the cultivation of indigo. I didn't know that. So now it's not a history I want to reclaim.
Right.
But I'm learning about this history so I can like maybe transform it some way.
Metabolize and transform.
Yeah. So that's for me how I process creativity. Kind of bring in my nerdy academic side into
it integrates for you. Yeah, the interests you have on the academic side, which I think creativity shows up everywhere, right? We have jokes in another podcast we've been doing about how even accountants need creativity, not creative accounting, but in that sense. But I ran that by an accountant once, and he said, "Absolutely, I need to be creative." So I think it can show up in all sorts of ways, and I love hearing that integration that you've experienced. Yeah.
What's that feel like for you when you're moving from the research to the moment of either having an idea of a piece, or even while you're working on it, like once you have the kind of core concept?
Well, I feel like the process is very chaotic in the beginning, because sometimes I won't have an idea and then my research will inform it. Well, I can share because I'm also trying to write a play.
Yeah.
A one-woman play, but that play started out as a poem. I was trying to write a poem about my early experiences in New Jersey, about the city of Paterson. But it was fuzzy, so I'm trying to like Google like the history of Patterson, trying to remember street names. And then I come across that a mosque that my dad sometimes goes to used to be like a vaudeville theater. And then from there, so it's just like from the poem, and then like I'm like, wow, that's like different. That's like contrasting. Like this mosque used to be
Slightly, yeah.
And then that just sparked a whole new idea. So it will like trigger like the research process might even trigger other ideas for me. But
yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it raises questions about like how does our creativity. We've talked about this podcast being about creativity and spirituality and the interconnection of those things, and part of our purpose in that is because we think that as we cultivate those things, it helps us be more complete as human beings. And we've got other aspects of ourselves, like, academic interests and, all sorts of things. And so I just think you're actually kind of almost expressing like a parable of the integration of all of that and being more fully yourself through exploring the creative side. And
I think I mentioned I felt like, excuse me, that I was losing that creative side. But again, we're more than just one thing. I feel like all of our experiences, whether we're kind of disconnected from that, like, I don't know, it's still a part of us, I think.
Yeah.
So what ways you experience creativity now? I don't know, like, I guess, how does it shape where you are now, maybe? Or where do you see yourself maybe in the future?
Yeah. Why don't I've usually been the first to respond to a question. So Stephen, why don't you?
Where is it at now? It was interesting. So when I was training as a spiritual director, it's called, the actual program is called The Art of Spiritual Direction. And it took me a long time to connect the fact that they called it an art, because it's actually the internal process for me is the same. Like, I'm sitting with a person, it's usually online, but I'm pretty still inside and I'm listening to them. And I'm also listening at an intuitive level for different kind of sense of questions to ask, things that stand out, ideas of where to go next with it, or what might be happening in that person's life. It might be an image comes to mind. So for me, it's been much more in this season an integration of the two, of my spirituality. And you can put, again, whatever language on top of it. Depends on that person's own background, what language I will use, depending on how they might describe their own spiritual life. But it's feeling really good to me to have an integration of, okay, the same practices that I do that help me to cultivate an inner stillness and mindfulness and sense of what is going on at an intuitive level, like that it works for both parts of my life. So it's been really, I would say in the last 2 years, bringing me back full circle to pull different parts of my life together. So it's a good journey. It feels nice.
Yeah. I think there's a lot I could say to that question. I'll try to keep it brief, and I'll just focus it on one thing. But and that's that, I'm writing poems and songs, etc. But I'm also really trying to treat like even what we're doing to form Table Collective as if Table Collective was itself a creative offering, a work of art, so to speak, and to pause at times and bring that same mindset to it as if I were writing a song or a poem. And that chaotic mess that you referenced earlier, it made me immediately think of a song I wrote for an earlier album, a song about a early like union activist named Joe Hill. And it's a long song. It's like a 10-minute long song. And at one stage, that song was like scattered through I had sheets of paper and it was just chaos. That line, okay, this. And somehow it got woven into a story. And I feel like sometimes Table Collective for me feels like this chaotic, random bunch of different things we're trying to capture and get into some kind of a flow. But that's a creative process, and so that's part of what I'm trying to connect to and just integrate it. Yeah.
And we often even actually treat it like, okay, if you're a creative piece, what do you want to be?
Yeah.
Like literally pause and ask.
We asked Table Collective,
Like
what do you want to be? What are you
amorphous
trying to tell
organization
us?
that you are.
Yeah. What are you trying to tell us?
What kind of community are you? What do you want to be like? What kind of spaces? What kind of experiences might people have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, I think I mentioned before that I wanted to be an artist, but I guess professionally, but that didn't pan out. So sometimes I have these thoughts of a lot of regret, like, oh, I didn't go to art school. I wanted to go to art school. But I also wonder how that would have affected me. Like, I wonder if I would have been more constrained going to art school because I had a specific idea on what art would mean then.
Right.
Also, the idea of being graded on my art doesn't really appeal to me.
Right.
Critiques are a whole nother beast.
Yeah.
So in many ways, I think I'm thankful maybe I didn't go through that process.
Yeah. Good.
It's good.
Is this a spot to maybe start bringing this episode to a wrap? We're going to obviously keep talking about these things. We have not exhausted our own stories of creativity, much less where does creativity come from and the sources of it. So we'll keep exploring these kinds of things. One of the things we've really hoped that this has done is prompt in you, whether you're here physically or whether you're watching in YouTube, to be reflecting on your own sort of origin stories, as it were, of creativity. And your earliest experiences of some of the blocks, things that might have changed in your life. And we have the advantage of here, those of us who are in the room together, we're going to break and come back together and actually talk about it right now. For those of you who are watching in YouTube, in addition to encouraging you to subscribe and to keep listening and watching, use the comments, right, to share with us your ideas about creativity in your own life and sources and that sort of thing. Engage with that conversation. We'd love to hear from you and interact with you about that. And so, we'll be back again every month.